because that kind of fits in with the philosophy of CrossFit. I've always found that it's something that you're developing physical qualities to be able to take on any particular task almost. So that's why all the events seem to be all different, and that makes it very difficult to track progress in the traditional sense.
Yeah, it's a nightmare trying to track progress objectively. I took in 2000 and what was it? 2000 after the 2020, yeah, after the 2020 season, so about through 2021, most of 2022, I took about a year and a half off and just lifted because that's something I've never got to do before. I've always played sport, and the sport has usually been like very heavily conditioning biased. And so I've never got to just do lifting in isolation and work through a program focused on do a bodybuilding phase, the hypertrophy phase, I do a strength phase, do like a peaking phase, and then see how much can I actually lift. And when I took out all of the conditioning, or most of the conditioning, just kept in the low intensity stuff, primarily is like recovery as well. It was so easy to track progress, to predict the progression that you could make. If you didn't make the progression, if I didn't make a progression, it was so easy to identify, okay, here is where the volume potentially was too much, or here is where the frequency of the intensity it was potentially too much. In the next phase, I'm going to change it. It works. It just became so much simpler when you only have to focus on one modality. But then when you throw in everything else, exactly as you say, the chaos comes in. And so I think that the perception is a very important skill to develop so that you can both understand how you are progressing in training, but also identify if you're potentially not progressing and something needs to change because you understand how your body is supposed to feel and both the ups and the downs. And then that also relates well to competition as well, because again, you may not have done the exact workout that you're doing in competition and training. So that perception, how does this feel? How does the pacing feel? Should I be this fatigued at this point in the workout? Is this a work rate that I can keep up for the remainder of the workout? Perception is a huge part of the sport.
When it comes to monitoring what you've done, like the training program, is everything down to a T? So every session, you know exactly what you're doing. And then do you write sort of perceptual notes alongside it and say, okay, here's a particular, I don't know, couplet. Heart rate was this at this point. I felt this went well. I felt this went badly. So not only you get feedback from your reflection based on like tactics of performing the particular workout, but also perception of how that session actually felt. And then if you've got that like every day, you've got a story of how all what you did in all this training and how that felt over a long period of time. And then it becomes more easy to try and determine if you have progressed or where things haven't gone as well as you'd like. Because the way you described the way you took everything away and just focused on lifting, it was very easy to see exactly where you could have improved, for example, or if you didn't improve in a certain way, you know exactly where that happened. But as soon as you add everything else, it gets a bit more chaotic. But at least from your previous sort of writing down exactly what you've done and perception of how that felt and et cetera, did that provide like a nice story as to show you how well you progress in certain ways, where your training needs to go, et cetera? So your monitoring is your training rather than having specific testing sessions.
Yeah, exactly. We work with Philip Bisgard of Apex Athletics, and we've been working with him for the past almost 2 years now. And that relationship does involve a lot of communication back and forth. And within that communication is both the objective stuff, so like the actual performance of the training, the numbers side of things. Like you say, heart rate can be a relevant one, depending on the workout, reps, times, all the other stuff, the scoring stuff. But then the perception is another big one as well, particularly in, I suppose, the frequency of, say, bad days. So we know that some of the training is going to be good, some of the training is going to be bad, and then some of it's going to be in the middle. And if we find that those days where it's getting bad are becoming more frequent, and then we're also noticing that maybe sleep is starting to be interrupted a bit, that hunger is starting to go down, the mood is starting to go down, we start spotting the signs, then it's okay, we're potentially needing to put in a deload here or take a step back from training because you're nearing potentially overtraining or under recovering. That's a big one in recording the feeling. And then also, like you say, recording the feeling towards different types of training over time so that you can start to see progress. And that can be feeling in terms of difficulty performing a movement. If you're performing a skill, it can be in your ability to the feeling of, say, lifting sessions when you've had to do them in a slightly fatigued state because you've already done conditioning in the morning. Is that improving all over time? Are you feeling like this is less of a daunting task for you to lift weight? Is it also easier for you to more consistently hit these numbers under fatigue? I think a big one is how easily you can warm up and get into the rhythm of a session as well. I find that as time goes, as we get further through a phase and I get more fatigued, stiffness and I suppose inflammation comes on a little quicker. And so it takes longer to warm up for sessions. You can't just walk into the gym and within 15 minutes you're able to get onto the barbell or get onto the workout. And when that starts happening, that's another sign that, okay, maybe we're nearing the end of the phase now.
No, it's really interesting key things that sort of pick up and give you information. No, that's really cool, especially around warm-ups. It's technically such an easy thing to track in terms of perception. And I think people want something so clear cut, but really just taking how you feel, especially if it was something as simple as how long it got you involved into the actual session, how long it took you to warm up. That's probably something which is often forgotten. Like warm-ups are supposed to be there to prepare you for the session, but it also is there to provide you with information of how you are at that particular time. So it's really cool to see that you take advantage of that time rather than just it's something you just go through to get ready for a session.
I'm probably on the other side where there's nothing that I do that I just go through. Maybe even if the stuff that I should just go through, I'm still analyze, okay, what does this mean? How is this going? Could this be better? But I do think that something that I've realized the importance of more so this season is the body's ability to adapt, which sounds obvious because that's the whole concept of training, right? You give it a stimulus and it adapts and it gets better. You get better. That's how you get better at what you're doing. But I think in terms of the body's ability to adapt to having to perform a task multiple times a week. So in the beginning of the season, maybe running 3 times a week or 2 times a week feels tough. It feels difficult to actually take the pounding on the joints multiple days in a week. But if you start off at a sensible level and you monitor how it feels and you pay close attention to that and that you trust that you will adapt over time, the body does adapt and you are able to introduce slightly more volume and then potentially another session so you've increased the frequency of running a week. And it's across the board with so many things. And I found that this season, past season particularly, things that we started off with that we did a very small dose of in the beginning, as I've trusted the adaptation and not rushed it, almost let it come to me and then responded to it, I've been able to handle a bigger and more frequent dose of different things as the season's progressed. But then interestingly as well, when it's got to the point where I've started to push the length of a phase quite hard. So instead of setting out as like, okay, this is going to be a 4-week block, this is going to be a phase and we're just going to keep going until you start showing signs that this is enough. And then we're going to deload. So then I get to see the progression. Okay, I'm able to handle a greater dose of this, a greater dose. And now I'm starting to struggle and it's not feeling good. And the warm-ups are having to take a little bit longer and the recovery between sessions is taking longer. That's a sign that, okay, I need to deload, come back and then basically pick up where we left off and continue making that progression.
Yeah, so far removed from the textbook of like progress for 3 weeks, deload, progress for 3 weeks, deload, which you always see. It's like just keep
Yeah.
progressing until like your body's telling you it needs the deload.